You're the sweetest thing I've ever known. Sweetest thing, sweetest thing. In the dreariness of my feelings, in the emptiness of my dreams. Sweetest thing. You're the light in my shining bright in my heart, guiding me there. Sweetest thing, sweetest thing. You're the light in my shining bright in my heart, guiding me there. Sweetest thing, sweetest thing. You're my love. You're my love. You're my love. You're my love.
It is Simphiwe Dana coming through with My Light. Very upbeat track there. Always a crowd pleaser at any Simphiwe Dana concert. I think this one comes from Firebrand. I stand to be corrected, but I think it comes from that particular album. She never concludes a show without, getting the crowd on their feet by performing My Light. A beautiful track right there. And that is how we kick off the show this afternoon. Hope you've had a great afternoon thus far. I mean, the days are just, they're just galloping away. But so be it. It is what it is. Hope your Tuesday is panning out wonderfully for you wherever you might be across the country today. It is the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, and we've got lots on the agenda today. We're touching on all kinds of things. It is World Social Work Day, and we're going to be catching up with a practitioner in that particular space from the University of Free State, and just talking about, being a social worker and some of the challenges that are faced by social workers. And of course, where do they go when it's time for them to seek support? You know what they say, you cannot pour from an empty cup, right? And they are members of our communities after all. And so today on their day, we thought we'd have the conversation that helps us better understand what their lived experience might be like. Also coming up today is creative artist as well as activist Mabatu Monsu is going to be joining us, and she's the curator of this year's film festival, which forms part of the Constitution Hill Human Rights Festival, and she'll be unpacking all of the excitement that is surrounding not only the festival but in particular the film festival component of it. Obviously it is the 30th anniversary of our democracy, and so I'm sure they've got quite the exciting array of films that speak to a multitude of themes that talk around democracy and all the liberties that lay within. On the other side of 2 o'clock, because it is Tuesday, we're going to dip into all things health and wellness, and we're going to have a conversation around tuberculosis awareness. I think it's actually, is it not Tuberculosis Awareness Month? I think so. No, I think so. We're going to tap into that conversation on the other side of 2, and I'll keep you abreast of what else is coming up on the other side of that. It's fast approaching 1:15 on the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga. 086 000 2032 is the number that you can call us on. 0614104107. And listen, we had this conversation yesterday because it's that time of the year, at the national broadcasters, television and radio alike. It's that time of the year. It's the floor crossing. It's the time that causes a lot of tension and a lot of excitement and a lot of anxiety as contracts get renewed. As contracts get renewed and some contracts don't get renewed. And we were having this conversation yesterday to be like, when you get a contract, right? When you get your contracts, how often do you actually engage your contract comprehensively? Do you read it right through, and if you work annually, in, for instance, say a circumstance like ours where your contract will be renewed annually, when you get the second and third and the fourth and the eighth editions of your contract as the years pile up, do you stop reading them? Do you just assume that they are the same as what they were in the initial year? And so you just automatically sign date initial each page and then give it back to your respective employer? Or do you still say, you know what, I'm going to sit with this for a day or two. Let me just read it through. Let my attorneys have a look at it. Let me scrutinize it. Let me see if anything has changed at all. Or do you just automatically sign? I get the feeling that a lot of our colleagues in this building just automatically sign the contracts. As my cameraman who's mending the camera for our live stream vigorously nods yes. Clearly he just signs his contract without reading it year on year on year. 086 000 2032 0614104107. I'd like to know, what do you do when you receive your contracts from your employers? Do you read it every time your contract is presented to you for renewal? Or do you just assume that it's the same as it was when you initially discussed the role that you will be fulfilling as an employee within the organization? So you can send through those voice notes right now, in fact, on 0614104107 and 086 000 2032. All right, let's take a quick break and then we'll come right back.
Fly better to your next holiday. Book your flights with Emirates to a holiday in Dubai, London, Istanbul, or Paris. Look forward to delicious regionally inspired cuisine, enjoy free-flowing premium drinks, and relax to your favorite movies on the way. Because it's not just about the destination, it's how you get there. This year, fly Emirates. Fly better.
SACE wishes all teachers a happy 2024 Human Rights Month and calls upon a stop to violence against our teachers. Teacher rights are human rights. Together we can create a brighter future for learners through safeguarding the rights of teachers. Hashtag Hands Off Our Teachers 2024 campaign. Proudly brought to you by SACE, the South African Council for Educators.
Join model and TV personality Dr. Fezile and Dr. Anesu on Top Travel. Allow yourself to be taken on an exhilarating journey across Africa, redefining travel at its finest on our very own home turf. From the rolling green hills of the Eastern Cape to the breathtaking sapphire waters of the Kenyan coastline, the duo explores the diverse landscapes and cultures of the continent we call home. Channel your inner adventurer with Top Travel. Start Saturday the 23rd of March at 8:30 p.m. only on
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
I've never seen someone taking the microphone away from someone else at a government event like this. And then the action, as the IFP describes it, of just handing the microphone to the king. I suppose anyone watching this would have been quite shocked.
Well, it has happened before in Mandene, so it has happened before. It's not new. But I was there on Saturday and I saw what happened. We just worried about these many press briefings because the making of violence, you can see, is underway right now.
Professor Musa Kolu, thank you. Cultural and political analyst.
SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes, 6 to 9 a.m. You are listening to The Full Circle.
So every year on March 19, we mark World Social Work Day. And social workers obviously celebrate the resilience of the profession and the generations of professionals who have withstood the test of time. And this year, World Social Work Day is being celebrated and honored under the banner of BUN Bibir. And of course, I don't speak Spanish, so that's the best to my pronunciation. BUN Bibir, Shared Future for Transformative Change. And we thought it would catch up with a social worker at the University of the Free State. Neo Rabuhali joins me now for this conversation. How are you doing, Neo?
Good day. Thank you so much for having me. I'm good, Miss Bridget, and how are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you very much. Life in Harmony is what it translates to. This year's theme, Life in Harmony, Shared a Future for Transformative Change. And I wonder for you, as somebody who is a practitioner and an educator in the space, what does this theme for 2024 speak to?
Okay, so this theme particularly speaks to us as humans existing in harmony with our spaces. In social work, we believe in, the person in environment, or the person having a reciprocal relationship with the environment. So I influence my environment as much as it influences me. So what are those things within the environment that I can do to ensure that there is harmony between me and my environment?
And very important component, I think, and probably fundamental to the work that social workers undertake on a daily basis.
Yes, absolutely. Because we are that profession that believes in, the people's right to determine what is going to work for them. So in our helping activities, we engage with our clients to make sure that whatever interventions that we are thinking with the individual so that they can commit to a process of change. We don't decide for them. So harmony is key in our space.
I like how you phrase that, because I also think it helps us engage social work and social workers from a different perspective. And let's talk about the pivotal role that is played by social workers and the profession in community, particularly so within the context of South Africa.
Yes, so we are that profession that, is caring, and our services render from the time, from birth until a person dies, if I can put it that way, because our beneficiaries, start off from newborns up until people are aged and obviously pass away. So we're not limited in terms of what it is that we do. So in terms of social work in South Africa, we try to respond to the various needs that are, represented in our communities. So be it child protection, be it issues of mental health, be it issues of substance abuse, gender-based violence, all of those are issues that social workers are very passionate about, and that, all of us try to, together with the rest of our communities, figure out.
And when you list those issues, Neo, it's easy to see that obviously the work itself, the vocation, tasks itself with addressing pressure point issues when we talk around things, matters of violence, substance, physical, sexual abuse, poverty, etc. These are all very emotive issues that we face within community. And I wonder, who supports those who supports us? Where do social workers turn? Because ultimately social workers are also just men and women who are members of community and may or may not also be affected by the very same things that they've got to leave their households every morning and go address on behalf of other people.
So true. Right now, where social work turn to is normally, that is why we need supervisors within the social work space. So for those of us who are privileged to have supervisors, that's where we go to sort of vent and, let it all out so that you can be supported. But some of us are privileged to can be able to go to other therapists, so a social worker does need a therapist, I believe. But our families are a big source of support for us. But normally we have each other to depend on. So it will be, that if a case, there's a lot going on and you need to vent. Sometimes we do just, have a quick knock at your neighbors and you speak to the neighbor about it, who is obviously a fellow social worker who's bound by our professional code of ethics.
And I mean, is there enough of that kind of resource, given the fact that also we have the conversation about the shortage of just social workers, and then I wonder, is there enough resource and accessibility of that resource for social workers to turn to in the times when they need support?
I wouldn't say there is, Bridget, currently. And it's one of the things that we're actually trying to create awareness about, to say we need more resources. They are not where they are supposed to be.
Yeah, and I wonder, Uti, what must be done in this situation, or what can be done in these situations?
I think what's important is for everyone to realize, as you had so beautifully put it, that it is an emotive, intensive type of work that we do. So if our leaders, could actually recognize and acknowledge that, and invest in actually ensuring that there is enough supervisors, for instance, for social workers, and that our spaces, our NGOs, our government departments, there's adequate or enough mental health professionals to whom social workers can go, vent and bounce off ideas. Such resources would really help in helping us not to be so burned out most often than not.
And in fact, some of the challenges that often arise within this particular field of work are issues around staff burnout, are issues around heavy workloads, too many case files, low salaries. And then I presume that also it perpetuates the cycle of then making the work unattractive, even if someone has the heart and the mind, because I believe it's probably a calling to be a social worker, because it's such a thankless job, that you could have the heart and the mind to get into the field, but the deterrent is that you still need to be a human being that's able to provide for yourself and your family. And if that doesn't find a balance, I'm just assuming then that it makes the entry into the profession a little less attractive for people who are so gravely needed.
Absolutely. It definitely does not make it easy. And some of the people, in as much as they really want to do it, from the bottom of their hearts, the reality is that what we are getting in terms of our salaries, and the other issues that compound that do make social work a bit less interesting. So it takes a particular type of a person to actually still want to persist and continue being a social worker in those circumstances.
What a vital and important vocation, and such a pity that right now it seems to be at the bottom of the priority list within this particular sector. And let's talk about the kind of characters or the character traits that should be embodied within somebody who might have a keen interest, because there could be somebody listening to us and for the first time they're thinking, oh, wait a minute, maybe this is something that I need to explore. I wonder what kind of character one needs to have, and I guess a sense of compassion would probably be at the very top of that list.
Absolutely, a sense of compassion. Respect for your fellow man, and here I mean respect in a sense that you do believe they've got the capacity within them to can decide what is going to work for them. They've got the capacity within them to know what needs to be done for their life to be better. All they need is for you to facilitate a platform, and sometimes they are so downtrodden that they don't even see their own strengths. So you need to be that person who believes in the strengths of human beings. Another trait that I believe is very important is that you need to be a scholar of life. You need to be eager to learn about a lot of things that are happening. As it is right now, I mean, society is facing challenges that 20 years ago, for instance, were not here. But we find ourselves in a position as social workers having to find new and creative ways to assist our communities. So you also need to be that person who's interested in legislation so that you can understand in what way can the law be utilized, to assist our people in as much as it is to their betterment. Sometimes people do not want or do not want to engage in the hard work that needs to be engaged in order for their circumstances to improve. And sometimes as social workers, we need to actually use the law to get them moving, for lack of a better word. Because at the end of the day, it's not about us, it's about them. Because if we don't get it right with our fellow men, I believe all of us are in trouble.
Yeah. Listen, Newa, we thank you so much for the selfless and thankless work that the likes of yourself and other colleagues within the profession of social work endeavor to do in our communities. That was Newa Rabuhali, who is a social worker at the University of the Free State. Today, March 19, marks World Social Work Day under the theme BUN Bibir Shared Future for Transformative Change. We've got the headline news coming up, and I still want to know, do you read your contract? 086 000 2032 and 0614104107. That's our WhatsApp line.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Bridget. In the headlines, political leaders should be careful not to polarize the country in the build-up to the general elections. This is according to political analyst Professor Setulego Matebisi, who says the court bid by the ANC to have newly registered MK party removed from the ballot paper is democracy at play. Counsel representing the ANC has sought to establish the jurisdiction of the Electoral Court to hear a matter in which the governing party has hauled the IEC to court. And the U.S. State Department says it's hopeful a transitional council will soon be confirmed in Haiti. I'll have details on these and other stories at 2.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
It is the full circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, on SAFM, and it's just gone 1:30. Asking the question, like I said, I use the context of us because everybody always uses the national broadcaster as the benchmark for April, with all the floor crossings and contract negotiations and things that happen within the two buildings between March and April in preparation for April, really. And I wondered, my colleagues, some of our younger colleagues yesterday were saying that, they just sign their contracts without really reading whether or not this contract contents are still the same as last year's contract contents or the year before. And I wondered how many of us actually take it for granted when you, go into the new year and you're renewing your professional contract in your respective workplaces. Do you just assume, particularly if you're staying within the same position, do you just assume that the contents of the contract are still the same as they were a year ago or 2 years ago, and you just sign right there and then on the spot? Or do you actually read the contract, make sure that everything is still up to scratch and, as was discussed and agreed upon? I wonder, where do you stand on that? 0614104107, that is our WhatsApp line, 086 000 2032. All right, let's go to WhatsApp. Oh, also, we got some voice notes on our earlier conversation on social work.
Hey, Bridget. I work as an employee health and wellness specialist. My background is social work. However, I've studied corporate governance and employee wellness. I possess a master's in one of those fields. My point in all of this is that I'm doing quite well as an SW because the private sector treats us differently. And there was a time that a caller called your show and said their community can just hire a social worker and pay them 5,000 rand to deal with whatever. There was an issue in the community. And I said to myself, what a misunderstanding that the guy was having as to who we are. And he actually just thinks that we can be paid 5,000 rand. The private sector treats us well. You get to have a mentor or a supervisor that they pay for to deal with your own mental health. So thanks, Sibongi here, very happy SW.
Good afternoon, Bridget. It's Anonymous here. I'm in the social work service space. I'm a social worker by profession. I'm glad that we are talking about the actual challenges that social workers are facing. What I've observed from my side with regard to this profession is that we are so overwhelmed with exactly what you've touched on, limited resources, where the communities are expecting us to do miracles with nothing. I mean, you can go to hospital. When you go to hospital and then they diagnose you that you have got this problem, the next thing that they will do is after they've done whatever that they're supposed to do, and then they prescribe you with a medicine, you will go to the pharmacy section to get that medication. As for us, it's different. You know, you are expected to be the pillar of all the departments. You know, wherever you go, you beg for them to assist the client. I mean, you go to schools, you need to beg for the clients to be assisted with the placement of their children. You go to home affairs, you need to beg. You go to hospitals, you need to beg. So it's so overwhelming. It's not a straightforward kind of a setting where you know exactly how this thing works, where there is a clear network of all the stages that the client must go through.
Stages, pages, screens, and more with Bridget Masinga.
All right, we always love hearing your thoughts, so feel free to keep sending us a voice notes on any of the conversations that we engage throughout the show, 061-410-4107. And it's beautiful to also hear from SW practitioners, and I now know that we can use just that simple acronym, social worker practitioners. So if you are a social worker, you can continue to weigh in. Today is your day after all. It is a World Social Work Day. Or you can chime in on our very light conversation about contracts, and you can be anonymous. It's fine. You can be anonymous. It's absolutely okay. 061-410-4107. That is our WhatsApp line. And of course, we are streaming also on our social media platforms. So if you happen to be on X or Instagram or Facebook, you can definitely search our handle at SAFM Radio and find us there for our live stream. Our next guest is standing by for stages, pages, screens, and more. Mabatu Mansour is joining me now, a curator of this year's film festival. It's the 6th edition of the Constitution Hill Human Rights Festival, which is taking place at a time when, of course, our country is in a crisis and our constitutional vision of social justice and human rights is being stretched to a breaking point. And for this reason, the theme for the festival this year is Seize the Power. Good afternoon to you, Mabatu. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you very much. Seize the Power, an incredible, I think, theme, particularly for the moment that we find ourselves in as South Africans. You know, on the one hand, we're celebrating 30 years of democracy, and on the other hand, we have what they're calling the most contentious elections yet. And on the back of all of that, Constitution Hill's Human Rights Festival, including the film festival, has got to respond in a very artistic and creative way.
Yes, absolutely. I think the body of work that the filmmakers have done speaks for itself. These are films, some from 1986, all the way to films from 2023. So I think they speak on their own. They have a very interesting conversation about South Africa and South Africa's place in the world as well.
And one does know as a creative, and I think you know, in the way that you create and the things that you are preoccupied with as well, that there is very much an important and pertinent role that arts in particular plays in conversations around democracy, in conversations around liberations of societies, and the stories that are archived and told.
Yeah. You know, absolutely. I'll speak specifically to film as well, because that's what our program is about. Film is a very powerful tool. It shapes perception. It can even shape behavior. So it's an art form that you have to do with a lot of responsibility. So, you know, one of the most difficult things is finding films that have all of the above together, you know, like creativity, that have artistic merit, but also speak to the social issues. So we're very excited that we were able to put together this body of work. And a lot of the films also speak to the current issues that we're having today: unemployment, workers' rights, women's liberation. And some of them do it all in. For example, we'll be screening like Strike a Rock, which covers, you know, 2 women pursuing justice for the Maracana massacre. But within that film itself, you obviously quite see issues of workers' rights being grossly violated. You see poverty, unemployment. You see issues of service delivery, which are very real for people today. So it's not only about looking at the past and how far we've come, but literally what do we need to do and address today. Yeah.
And in fact, film offers up a unique, I think, a unique opportunity for people to critically engage some very harsh themes and very harsh topics that otherwise might be difficult for societies to have a broader conversation on, outside of the safety of dissecting a film and using that as a metaphor for life.
Yeah, I mean, you know, Roger Ebert says it quite brilliantly, says films are machines of generating empathy. You know, with film, there's stuff you can say without anybody uttering a word. The image is already speaking 1,000 words, you know. And in tandem with films, we're having some workshops. So, for example, Story Oasis is doing a workshop called The Transformative Power of Film, where we're doing a very light entry into sort of film literacy. You know, we all watch so much TV and film, but we don't necessarily take it as seriously as studying it. You know, we study literature in school. How do you read a book? What are symbols? What are this and that? Yeah. So with this workshop, we're hoping to like introduce to. It's on day 1. It's on the 21st. To say, okay, for the rest of the film festival, we've kind of given you a taste of the different layers of filmmaking through this workshop and how to study and analyze the film. We're also having panel discussions and Q&As with the filmmakers so that, you know, we can respond to the work, talk about it, and what it aims to do.
I mean, I know you gave us a little bit of a hint of 1 or 2 of the projects that could be featured. Perhaps we can go a little bit deeper even on some of that as to what festival attendees can look forward to when it comes to the film schedule.
Okay, so day 1, we're looking at Fleeing to God, which is a documentary that delves into the stories of 3 queer religious leaders who sought asylum in South Africa from Zimbabwe due to religious-based queerphobia. We have, on a couple of days, 2 episodes of Have You Heard from Johannesburg, which was a really brilliant documentary. This particular episode that we're playing on day 1 is the story of the first ever international grassroots campaign to successfully use economic pressure to bring down a government, and we're playing this immediately after the 1,000 Drums for Palestine. And, you know, I try to curate the films in a way that are in conversation with the rest of the festival. So after the 1,000 Drums for Palestine, we play this film, Have You Heard from Johannesburg, which shows you what the global struggle was in helping us against apartheid and why it's important for us to participate in the struggle against apartheid in Palestine. We've got In Bloom series on day 2, which is like an anthology of a range of issues, like 5 10-minute films that address a range of issues, and they're all directed by young women from different parts of the world, and this is brought to you by MTV Staying Alive Foundation. We've got quite a nice selection. We've got Senden, who's the father of African cinema, and it will be a documentary about his journey as a self-taught filmmaker in Africa. And I thought it's a nice way to sort of celebrate the role of filmmakers, a film about filmmakers. Another film about filmmakers is The Analog Revolution, how feminist media changed the world, which view how women had to fight, to get access to a camera and be able to tell stories, stories that matter not only to women but to society at large.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like an incredible, robust offering that you've got for the festival for 2024. And I wonder, for film goers, a lot of people are also always interested in the sort of the context and the juxtaposition of our own liberation stories and struggles on the backdrop of us being part of this continental community, right? And all the issues that we grapple with as South Africans. Is there also going to be a little infusion of all of that? Because I'm thinking around, our liberation stories not separated to the rest of the continent. In recent years, the conversation around xenophobia that's confronted us, particularly as South Africans. And this provides a great time for us to recognize we live in the context of the continent. Did we lose Mabato? Oh, I think we lost her there for a split second. But the festival is happening between the 24th and, the 21st and the 24th. She's back.
I'm back.
Oh, there you are. Sorry
back
about
like
that.
I never left.
Back like you never left. Just took an ad break. Yeah. Yes. So the film festival in particular, in context to the continent and the conversations that we should be having as South Africans amongst other Africans.
I mean, for example, Fleeing to God talks about migration from Zimbabwe to South Africa due to queerphobia and being ostracized. As mentioned, Have You Heard from Johannesburg covers the global struggle, in liberating South Africa, and I'm hoping that shows us why we should participate in other liberation movements around the world and in the continent. 1,001 Days is about the first 1,001 days mothers taking care of kids, but there are characters from different parts of the continent. So I think that each of the film and the In Bloom series also has young women directors from different parts of the world, but it was filmed here in South Africa. So the films are having conversation with each other in that way. And how can I forget, we're also screening on the 21st Sharpeville Spirit, which, is a film that was commemorating the Sharpeville massacre. At the time, it was 25 years because the film was made in 1985. But it was a film that was made by a British, filmmaker. And I really thought it was important to have something that reminds us, of Sharpeville on Human Rights Day. But interestingly, the conversation there in the film was filmed in 1985, but it's still communicating about landlessness, high rents, insecurity of having places, of being able to afford a home, things that are still relevant to today. The Analog Revolution is a Canadian film. These are things that the stories are relatable to us here.
Yeah.
So I think just by virtue of these films being programmed in the way that they mix each other, has a conversation. So just to mention the last one, Skulls of My People was filmed by a South African filmmaker, Vincent Poloy, but it covers the struggle of a small tribe in Namibia, fighting for the return of the skulls of their people taken by Germans. So as you've heard, we've got stories of South Africa being told by people from other parts of the world, and stories about other people in the continent being told by South Africans. And this is what filmmakers do. They go out of their comfort zone to go and tell these very important stories in aesthetically pleasing and engaging ways.
Absolutely. It's definitely sounding like an exciting festival, and we do appreciate the time. So the 21st until the 24th of March is this year's Constitution Hill Human Rights Festival, and Mabatu Monsu and alongside her team have curated quite the offering for you in as far as the film festival component is concerned, with curated films, panel discussions, workshops, and a whole host of other things. Milady, it's always a pleasure. Looking forward to this festival that was curator Mabatu Mansu joining us today for the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga. Let's take a quick break here, and then we'll throw it over to WhatsApp on 0614104107.
SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. You are listening to The Full Circle.
It is the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, on SAFM, leading the conversation on this fine Tuesday afternoon. And we are in conversation with you today. So if you are a social worker, today is World Social Worker Day. You can always send us a voice note with your experiences in the sector, or maybe some of the challenges that you face, or even on a lighter, more celebratory mood, the impact that you make and how that also just fuels you and ignites you as a human being, right? Because the reward has got to be in the success that the job provides. So 0614104107, or you can always indulge me and let me be nosy for a second and answer the question: how do you engage your employment contract? Do you even engage your employment contract as I side eye you? Because I think a lot of people probably don't. 086 000 2032 is the number that you can call us on, or 0614104107 if you'd like to send through a voice note. Let's go to WhatsApp. Also on our...
Hi, Sispray. On signing the contract and reading it, I normally make sure that I get a copy of my contract so that on my own time I can read it. But the catch is, remember, there's a fine line between that time when you signed it and then now having to take it home, because you can read it on the spot, of course. When you go home, then you read it. When you come back, maybe you find some clause that you don't align with or you don't agree to, and you come back, they tell you you signed already. But I never had that kind of incident. I go home and I read it. If I don't understand anything there, then right away when I'm home, you'll get a call from me, whether you are HR or whatever. You'll get a call from me or an email stating that I just read 1, 2, 3. I'm not in alignment with this one. So can we have a meeting as soon as possible? Thank you, Gwenna.
Bridget, lesson learned. I do read my contract now that I'm more full-time into freelancing. But here's the story. Like 8 years ago, I was freelancing for this media company and I didn't read my contract. I signed the contract. The offer was so great, only to find that I was locked in a 3-year contract with the same hourly rate for 3 years. I only learned after I've signed my contract and also having a conversation with my colleague that, he was telling me that, I'm getting an increase this year. I was like, what? I'm supposed to as well get the same increase, only to find that my contract was locked in for 3 years. So read your contract.
When it comes to the money part, I'm like a hawk. Like when it comes to the money, the back page, I call it the back page, because sometimes, especially if you're locked into long term, like 3 years, 5 years, sometimes you only really just negotiate the back page, but the sort of the escalation terms are already preempted right in the initial conversation. But I watch my cents like a hawk. 086 000 2032 0614104107. Let's go to Kids Corner, and then that should run us to the top of the hour with Ann Musa.
This program is brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives.
I'm Zonaka Malihasi. I'm 10 years old. I live at Middleland Zone 7. My school is Tumbezo Primary. I'm at grade 5. The most interesting thing that I have learned is that everyday children have been raped and kidnapped. Wow, when I heard something about that, I feel bad and not safe. I heard all the information from the radio. Yes, this helped me a lot because I've learned to lock the gate and house when I'm all alone. Yes, I do share it with other people so that they can learn something. I feel scared and uncomfortable about all of that. I found learning new things very stressful. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Ashley Kabamba. A really interesting fact I have learned recently is that apparently Australia is wider than the moon. This fact captured my attention because if I were to think about it, it would seem very unlikely that Australia, the continent, would be wider than the moon itself. I actually read this fact somewhere on social media. I feel like the way it helped me was that I gained more knowledge and possibly it changed my perspective on what I think I really know about the world and other things. I shared this information with a lot of people. I think this fact caught my attention probably because it is something I haven't heard before. I find learning new things really easy for me.
Good afternoon. My name and surname is Piavishan Pembe. I am 9 years old. The most interesting thing that I have learned recently is that when a person breaks a bone, it heals quickly than when a person breaks a joint. Apparently, joints take a long time to heal. This is something I learned from my NS and Tech teacher. We were learning about bones and skeletons, and our teacher had a big colorful picture and structures to see and touch. I find the human body interesting. That is why it captured my attention. I shared it with my mom when I got home. She also found it interesting, and she also didn't know that bones heal faster than joints. I enjoy learning new things. I found it fascinating. My mom says I ask a lot of questions. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bikhansa Taka. The most interesting thing that I have learned recently is catching crabs. It captured my attention because it was an experience I have never done in my life. I learned how to catch crabs by using a string and a carrot to attract the crabs. I shared it with other people so that they could also learn it from me. Learning new things is easy, but sometimes stressful, especially if you have never tried it before.
My name is Andani Ndauzi and I'm 11 years old, and I think it's important that children learn new things every chance we get because children are curious about many things. I can remember being young and really wanted to know where we started from. I learned many things from the ages of growing up and from friends. It's also important to learn new things because you can use it in schools and other places. Also, learning new things can also educate other people.
Hello everyone, I'm Mushfiqa Talib. While growing up, it's very important to learn how to do different activities because it may benefit you when you are older or become something you are good at. I am and has always been open to trying new things because I'm a fast learner and I really enjoy learning things I haven't tried yet. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Hi guys, my name is Tulu Falobeng. I'm always open to learning something new because it's great and fun. The importance of learning for young kids is that they can learn something new that they didn't even know at all. They can even put it into practice. Now that is something fun and cool. Learning can never be enough. All kids should learn, which is very important, helping their mind develop.
My name is Orisitsana Makanga. I'm 10 years old. Yes, I would learn something new if I had the chance. Like I would learn what that word means and what it is. That's the importance. And yes, I do think learning can be enough.
Hello friends! Imagine for a moment that you take a journey in a dense dark jungle and you can barely move forward because thick vegetation has encircled you in all sides. And of course you desire to get to the point where you can bask in the lovely sunshine. What actions would you take? You will require a tool to assist you in navigating through the dense vegetation of the jungle. In this situation, the process of learning is comparable to going on a journey. Your mind acts as a tool that carves out the pathways of your life journey. Stay vigilant and nurture a positive mindset when it comes to acquiring new knowledge. What will you do? Well, you will need to use a tool that will help you to cut your way through the jungle. Similarly, the process of learning is like a journey in this scenario. Your mind is a tool that cuts through to create a path in your life journey. Cultivate positive study routines. Whether at school or at home, there is a wonderful chance to acquire new knowledge. Be sure to take advantage of it. Learning new things every chance you get will benefit you greatly, as it will improve your daily life and better equip you for the future. The more empowered you are to accomplish tasks and reach goals. So commit to continuous learning. Just like how consuming healthy food fuels your body, acquiring new information and developing new abilities also nourishes your mind. Your mental well-being will get better. Achieving success in learning will boost your self-esteem and empower you to take any new challenges.
This program was brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
In our top stories, political analyst weighs in on ANC's bid to deregister MK Party and Eastern Cape police hunt for cash heist suspects. Good afternoon. We start off with election news. Political leaders should be careful not to polarize the country in the build-up to the general elections. This is according to political analyst Professor Setulego Matebese, who says the court bid by the ANC to have newly registered MK Party removed from the ballot paper is democracy at play. He says the country has been bleeding for too long due to political tension.
What we should not tolerate and encourage is where leaders, fuels political violence when people differ with them. That is something that we should not at all encourage. South Africa as a country has been bleeding for too long. And I strongly believe that an election period is a period to celebrate what we have achieved as a country.
Advocate Sesi Baloyi has contended the decision by the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer, Mawetu Masere, to reject the original application by the Umkhonto weSizwe Party was final. Baloyi argues the MK Party was supposed to submit a fresh application before the court instead of supplement its application to the IEC. Baloyi is representing the ANC in the matter brought against the IEC in the Electoral Court in Bloemfontein.
Once he's rejected the application, that application is defunct. That file is done and it's closed. And we will show that on the Commission's own papers, they understand the difference between a live application and an application that has been rejected. They understand that. So the first question is the decision of the DCO to consider a rejected application, allow it to be supplemented, and then make a decision on the basis of that application. We say it's not permissible because the decision to reject that application was a final decision.
Lenduku Ndemande, who is one of the 5 accused applying for bail in connection with the murder of rapper Keenan aka Forbes, has told the Durban Magistrates Court that is not a flight risk. In his sworn statement read out in court by his lawyer Simpiwe Mlotshwa, Ndemande says he handed himself over to police on the 28th of February this year. Ndemande and his co-accused were allegedly involved in the killing of Forbes and Tibelo Tibbs Mutswane in February last year. Mlotshwa read Ndemande's sworn statement into the court record.
On 27 February 2024, while away visiting my girlfriend, I received a call from my biological mother at Boy area in Camberdown. She informed me that there were police at home looking for me. She thereafter handed a cellular phone to a person who told me that he is a police and that I must hand myself over. He further stated that in the event I failed to hand myself over, he had already showed my mother where my grave would be, next to the cattle kraal, as he and other police were even prepared to shoot me.
The Hawks in the Eastern Cape are searching for 20 suspects involved in a cash-in-transit heist between Butterworth and East London. Provincial Hawks spokesperson Yolisa Mgolodela says a G4S security armoured vehicle was transporting money when the suspects in 3 white bakkies fired shots at it. The driver lost control of the vehicle and it landed on its roof. 3 guards were robbed of their guns. She says the suspects are facing 7 charges of attempted murder and armed robbery.
While the suspects were collecting an undisclosed amount of money, a police vehicle came across the scenario where they were accosted with a hail of bullets from the suspects. A shootout ensued between the police and the suspects, where one member was wounded. The suspects escaped the scene in the 3 Toyota bakkies. The 3 security guards and the member were taken to hospital and are in a stable condition. The Hawks are appealing to the public to come forward with any information that can lead to the arrest.
And finally, the U.S. State Department says it's hopeful a transitional council will soon be confirmed in Haiti. It's intended to fill the power vacuum left by the resignation last week of Prime Minister Ariel Henry, but it's opposed by the criminal gangs which control large parts of the country. The BBC's Will Grant reports.
From the moment Haiti's unelected but Washington-backed Prime Minister Ariel Henry stood down this month, the US State Department has been vocal in its support for a 7-member transitional council. Yet even though one might nominally take charge, it is hard to see how it can govern or bring greater stability to Haiti, even in the short term. For many Haitians, it feels like the political steps being taken by outside nations pale into insignificance against the scale of the security crisis and the humanitarian emergency inside Haiti.
Recapping the top story, political leaders should be careful not to polarize the country in the build-up to the general elections. This is according to political analyst Professor Setulego Matebesi, who says the court bid by the ANC to have newly registered MK party removed from the ballot paper is democracy at play. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Since I come home, well, my body's been a mess, and I miss your ginger hair and the way you like to dress. I want to come on over and stop making a fool out of me. Why don't you come on over, but your house on a up for sale. Did you get a good lawyer? Hope you didn't catch a 10. Hope you found the right man who'll fix it for you. Are you shopping anywhere? Change the color of your hair. Are you busy? And did you have to pay that fine that you was dodging all the time? Are you used to since I come home, well, my body's been a mess, and I miss your ginger hair and the way you like to dress. Won't you come on over? Stop making a fool out of me. Why don't you come on over, sometimes I go out by myself and I look across the border and I think about all the things I do. And in my head I paint a picture. Since I come home, well, my body's been a mess, and I miss your ginger hair and the way you like to dress. Won't you come on over? Stop making a fool out of me. Why don't you come on over, Valerie?
It is Amy Winehouse. There's a docu-film that is set to come out sometime this year. I'm not too sure when. And it explores the life and the rise to stardom for the very iconic musician. It looks at her love life and, of course, the tragic early death that took her life. And it is made in full support by her family and, of course, her estate. So looking forward to that one. It's titled Back to Black. And this is a docu-series around the life and times of Amy Winehouse. Should be exciting stuff, right? A biopic. Always interesting when biopics are also made in full support by families and estates, because sometimes they err on the side of caution and, you know, the full unencumbered story is not exactly told because some parts get censored, and of course brand and reputation is to be protected, and so the narrative might shift a little bit to accommodate those that are left behind. So interesting, very interesting. But some families are also quite okay to allow the creative carte blanche for directors to tell the story as truthfully and unencumbered as the story can be told. Back to Black is that documentary. We'll let you know closer to the time when it releases. For now, though, we're shifting gears a little bit. I said on the other side of 2 o'clock, we're going to be looking at matters of health and wellness. And come this Sunday, it's going to be World Tuberculosis Day, March 24th. And TB Day is observed for many reasons. But part of those reasons, I guess, is to also bring much awareness to the prevalence of TB, not just in the country, but worldwide. And also have a conversation that looks as innovative and preventative measures, and taking stock, of course, of how far we have come as global citizens in the sort of, I use the word fight loosely, in the fight against TB. And we've got Dr. Becky Khole joining us now, who's a pulmonologist based at the Mediclinic Med Forum Hospital. How are you doing, Dr. Becky?
I'm very well, thank you, ma'am. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us in conversation today. And I guess perhaps let's start off by getting an understanding as to what is TB and how does it present itself on the onset?
TB is a bacterial disease that affects the respiratory system, so it affects your lungs and your upper airways primarily, but it can also affect your brain, it can affect your intestinal organs, and it can also affect your skin. It is acquired through the air that you breathe every day. If you're in contact with someone who has TB and is not yet on treatment or has not been diagnosed, and it presents with a cough. So it will be a cough that lasts about 2 weeks, and nothing that you do makes it better. So even if you get a course of antibiotics, it doesn't get better. And it's also associated with night sweats, where you wake up with your bed sheets wet because of the sweating at night, regardless of the weather. And you also have weight loss in the initial 2 weeks that you've contracted TB. So if you've got those symptoms, the cough is usually productive, so you'll have some sputum coming out that has a color, whether yellow or green. So if the cough is associated with night sweats and weight loss, you should be suspecting that you've got tuberculosis.
And I'm presuming that, and I want to find out, because you mentioned the symptoms presenting in 2 weeks. So I wonder, firstly, does it run a particular course when untreated, or is it something that's chronic if it's untreated?
So TB is one of the communicable diseases that has to be treated with anti-TB treatment that you can get at the local clinic or at your pharmacy as prescribed by the doctor, and you should be treated for a total of 6 months. So if you do not treat TB for a total of 6 months, you have a risk of being partially treated. So the TB bacteria continues to cause damage in your body, even though you think that you have taken enough treatment for the TB. And it can also spread to obviously other organs if it's not completely treated. So very few times does it run a natural course where someone gets TB and they don't even realize that they got TB and they get cured without even noticing that they've got TB. But in most of those cases, you can tell that the patient has had TB in that their lungs have scarring that shows that the body also damaged the lung while it was trying to fight the TB.
I see. And throughout the course, your treatment course, throughout that 6 months, are you contagious throughout the 6 months? Are you transmittable or transmissible is the word? Or are there certain periods where you are more likely to be more contagious than other periods?
So the first 2 weeks of your treatment of tuberculosis, you are still contagious. But as long as you remain on the treatment, you isolate usually for the first 2 weeks or so. After that, your ability to spread the TB reduces significantly. So by the time you've completed a month of treatment and you are compliant and the treatment that you're being given is the right treatment for the kind of TB that you've got, you should not be giving TB to other people. But the bacteria continues to grow in your body if it's not on treatment, and it can damage the rest of your own body system, which is why the completing your treatment after 6 months is so important.
Okay. I know I galloped straight ahead to some of the other questions, but just to rewind it back also, am I to understand, or do I understand correctly, that there is no sort of one generic TB? It comes in one or two types?
There is one or two types of TB, but the commonest one is Mycobacterium tuberculosis that affects, like I've said, either your lungs and your brain. But commonly, more than 70% of the cases would be affecting your lungs. There's other forms of Mycobacterium, but they are not called tuberculosis, so they don't form part of TB. But Mycobacterium tuberculosis, there's one. It just affects different parts of your body.
I see. And when you talk, Dr. Becky, when you talk about it affecting the brain and other parts of the body, is that when it's at a heightened severity? Is there sort of a differentiator in how severe it can be or how mild it can be?
So, because it enters your body through your airway, your body is able to contain it within the airway if your immune system is good enough.
Okay.
If your immune system is not good enough, so patients who are on treatment for cancers and they have cancers and the cancer brings your immune system down, patients who are on treatment for the cancer that further reduces your immune system, patients with diabetes that is uncontrolled and not being treated, patient with HIV that is uncontrolled and not being treated, and patients who are on immune suppressing drugs such as treatment for rheumatoid arthritis, treatment for lupus, systemic lupus erythematosus. So a couple of diseases that have treatment whose goal is to actually reduce your immune system. So if your immune system is low and it's not controlled, a TB can then spread to other organ systems.
I see. Okay. No, I see. That completely makes sense. And then in as far as, I guess racial demographics or even age demographics, are there particular and specific groups that are more affected? And are there reasons as to why that is, if that's the case?
So we'll start with the children aged below the age of 5. And that is because their immune system has not developed well enough. And then we'll go to people over the age of 65, and that's because they've gone into what we call immune senescence, or their immune system is just not as strong as it used to be, and it wanes as they get older. So those are the two age groups that are at high risk of TB. In between those ages, there is the link with immunosuppression, so the diseases that I've mentioned.
Yeah.
However, people with a well immune system can still get TB, and they can still spread TB. So there isn't an obvious preferential age, but amongst Africans, TB is the highest, and that is because of various reasons, including the fact that we live in more overcrowded places, and our socio-economical status is a bit lower than our counterparts. So it is the highest in African population.
I see. Makes sense. All of those social factors that come into play. There's an estimated 54,200 people in South Africa that pass on from TB, or that passed on from TB in 2022, and around 280,000 that fell ill with the disease, according to the World Health Organization. Now, according to these numbers, it shows that South Africa, on the one hand, we're meeting the targets in as far as reducing new cases of TB, but on the other hand, we're struggling in as far as reducing the deaths of TB. Does that speak to other maybe comorbidities that are also at play and other social dynamics that are at play that ultimately lead to fatalities of people diagnosed with TB?
So this is a multifaceted problem. So the first problem is awareness, which is what we're trying to address now by teaching people that if you're coughing and you've got these symptoms, please go to their nearest healthcare provider and be diagnosed with TB. So there's late diagnosis in patients with tuberculosis. The second thing is that access to care is not as great as we think it is. So as much as TB is one of the diseases where you can get treatment properly at your local clinic, most of the South African population, their local clinics are far, and it's difficult for them to get to the local clinic every month to get their treatment. They cannot afford the transport to get there. The other problem then is that we've got a high burden of HIV, and it is going undiagnosed as well as the TB that's going undiagnosed. So you get a double attack on your immune system, increasing your chances of mortality from the TB. Patients with diabetes and other forms of immunosuppression are not getting screened enough for the TB. So it's more the fact that we're underdiagnosing. One, we present late to our healthcare professionals, and we can't really afford to get the kind of care that we need when you've got TB. The other bigger problem in other societies is the fact that people have malnutrition, which further diminishes your immune system, that makes you more susceptible to mortality from TB itself.
Okay, so it's like you said, it's a multitude and a complex issue that is leading to that particular statistic. And I wonder, in as far as treatment, because one of the challenges you mentioned is access to care. And as far as treatment, what does it look like when treating TB? Is it a daily tablet that one is taking, or is it a once-off?
So it's a once a day tablet or few tablets.
Okay.
So anything depending on your weight. So if you weigh heavier people will get obviously more tablets, and lighter weighted people will get less tablets. But it's once a day.
Yeah.
And you take it for a total of 6 months. So it should improve compliance. Even the fact that all the tablets that you're taking is a combination of tablets that are fighting against TB, but it's made up into a single tablet. So instead of, if you had to take individual tablets and you weighed 70 kgs, you'd be taking 4 times 4 tablets, 16 tablets. So each tablet contains 4 medications in it. So if you weigh about 70 kgs or more than 54 kgs, you'd be taking about 4 tablets once a day.
I see.
There's been some improvement in the fact that it's a combination drug, so the pill burden is not a lot, and the fact that you can take it once a day has made it a little bit easier to take. And I think after 2 months of treatment, depending on the kind of TB that you've got, if you've got TB of the lung, after 2 months of treatment, they reduce your pill burden to about two tablets a day for the rest of the 4 months. So if you comply, you get to drink less tablets. And if you complete your treatment, you get to only treat your TB for a total of 6 months.
Yeah. And as you talk, Dr. Becky, I'm thinking, I guess, part of also just ensuring, that we get a handle on TB, whether we're talking fatalities or new infections, is also change social behavior, right? Because we also know, and I think you're in a better position because I speak from the outside looking in, but we know how sometimes patients are very reluctant with chronic medications. Even if it's just taking 1 tablet a day, people might find it burdensome after a while.
I've found that patient education goes a long way in improving compliance and in improving patients agreeing to taking their treatment. So if patients know why they're taking the treatment, if patients know how they got the disease, if patients know what the consequences of not taking their treatment is, and if they realize that if you actually just take it for the first 6 months, you may complete your treatment, you don't have to take it for longer. Because the moment you develop drug resistance, you get into the realm where your TB gets treated for 9 to 18 months, and it is a worse off trade off than to just comply to your treatment and take it for 6 months. It's just like every other chronic disease. I mean, if you don't take your hypertensive medication, as you should take them, you are at risk of developing kidney failure, being on dialysis, needing a lot more treatment to now manage the kidney failure and the hypertension, or you get to have heart failure, and then you must be on heart failure medication, kidney failure medication, and hypertensive medication. So if you comply to your medication in the beginning, you actually reduce the amount of medication that you might need if complications develop.
Yeah, and just as we wrap it up again, because of course March 24 is World Tuberculosis Day, let's just recap, if anyone's joining our conversation in the tail end, those presenting signs and the importance of getting tested, and also what does a TB test look like? You know, a lot of people we come out of COVID now with little prongs being stuck up our noses and the back of our throats, and sometimes people want to know how severe is the actual test.
The commonest TB test that we're going to use is a sputum. So that sputum that you cough up every morning, that is what you're going to give to your healthcare provider. They're going to take it to the lab, and the lab is going to test it for TB.
I see.
The turnaround time for your TB results is usually a day. But if in an efficient system, it's actually a few hours. And then the symptoms, again, I'll recap. So a cough that is lasting for more than 2 weeks, that is accompanied by weight loss, that's accompanied sometimes by drenching night sweat. So you sweat and you literally wake up and your bed sheets are wet because you were sweating so much, regardless of the weather. Then you know that you probably have an infection in your lungs, and the most likely cause is TB.
Yeah. Dr. Becky Khole, thank you so much for the time today. That was Dr. Becky, who's a pulmonologist, and she's based out at the Mediclinic MedForum Hospital. So if you got some medical aid or some reserve funds, you can go there and ask for her by name for a consultation. It's approaching 2:30. It's time for us to catch up with Ann Musa.
Good afternoon. Thanks, Bridget. In the headlines, the alleged orchestrator of the murder of rapper Keenan, aka Forbes, Mziwetemba Gwabeni, has told the Durban Magistrates Court that his first wife opened a case of assault with the police watchdog iPad after officers came looking for him. He's applying for bail with his co-accused. And political leaders should be careful not to polarize the country in the build-up to the general elections. This is according to political analyst Professor Sethuleho Matebesi, who says the court bid by the ANC to have newly registered MK party removed from the ballot paper is democracy at play. I'll have details on these and other stories at 3.
You are listening to The Full Circle.
All right, we're still keeping to the theme of TB, tuberculosis, because on Sunday, March 24th, is World Tuberculosis Day. So we thought we'd still maintain the conversation around that particular theme. And now we're going to be joined with the TB Advocacy Manager at the Department of Health. And they've teamed up with the Aurum Institute in collaboration with the department to take a TB awareness drive to Sidibeng, which is not too far from us. It's within the regions of Gauteng. Good afternoon to you, Pumlani. Shimia is joining me. How are you doing?
I'm fine, ma'am. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you, Buti. I'm great. All right. So the department partnered up with the Aurum Institute and on World Tuberculosis Day, which is fast approaching this weekend on the 24th of March. The spotlight is all going to be on all issues TB and in particular the transmissibility of the lung disease.
That's correct.
Yes. Tell me the importance of embarking on this awareness. We just spoke to Dr. Becky now, who was talking around part of the struggle for them in the medical, fraternity is awareness.
Yep. In fact, the event is intended to raise awareness and education for the community at large. That's why there's a lot of activities surrounding this event. But it is said that we do a lot of activity around this time because TB continues killing people throughout the year.
Yeah.
There is no month in which you say that, TB deaths have actually increased. TB deaths are occurring throughout the year. And therefore, we should be raising awareness and education of communities throughout, and not only when we approach World TB Day, then we can say, now we're looking for partners, now we're looking for other activities that are actually going to support what we're doing as the TB program.
Yeah.
It's an all-year-round activity.
Yeah. And the theme for this year's World TB Day is invest in action to end TB now, get screened, end stigma and save lives. And that part, very important, because stigma is very much attached sometimes to these comorbidities that we talk about.
It is. In fact, stigma might actually be one of the issues that actually cause people to not complete their treatment, cause people not to attend their own clinic and attend a clinic that is far from them because they don't want to be seen, because of stigmatizing people who've got tuberculosis. So people would want to get healthy, but because of the stigma, they prefer to get sick. Yeah, and that's wrong as communities for us to actually stigmatize people with tuberculosis.
And I wouldn't even know, I don't know, in your conversations with community and stakeholders around this, what would even cause us to place a stigma on tuberculosis? Is because we assume with its association to other diseases and diagnosis like HIV and AIDS?
It's one of them. But if you will recall that TB has been a stigmatized condition as long as you can remember. When we used to put TB patients in hospitals, they were stigmatized, and then we came with decentralization so that we make the treatment of tuberculosis available at all public health facilities, including clinics, so that people are less stigmatized. Yeah, but you find that stigma is not actually coming to an end. As now, as the department, we are looking at coming with a program that is actually going to look at mitigating stigma and looking at the ethics side of things and human rights. And we kind of engage our healthcare workers and anyone who has to do with the health system along the issues of ethics and stigma and human rights. Then we may see a significant decrease, perhaps then a reported decrease in the number of people who actually feel stigmatized because they have tuberculosis.
Yeah. And I was actually going to ask, in as far as the department is concerned, what are some of the engagements in having that conversation around stigma, particularly, and how it relates to prevention and treatment? Are you engaging on the ground with community to educate and conscientize people that this isn't something that you need to be ashamed of? In fact, any diagnosis is not something you need to be ashamed of.
Of course, we are talking to people on the ground, but we now need a kind of concerted and systematic kind of approach. That's why now we're saying that, okay, let's train trainers on ethics, human rights, and stigma. And once we've trained these trainers, then they will cascade the training to either a provincial or a district level or sub-district level. And therefore, the whole country then can actually be in a position to have been exposed to some of the trainings that are actually taking place amongst healthcare workers and any other health-related cadre that is actually engaging or interfacing with the public in terms of the delivery of the service.
Yeah. Talk to me, Butphumlani, about Citibank, where you hosting the campaign, where you're kicking off this year's World Tuberculosis Day awareness campaign. Citibank, I read, has got the highest cases of TB in South Africa. Not just Gauteng, in South Africa. Why is that? What factors are coming to play within that community?
With Citibank, what we've done for us to kind of nominate a venue for hosting the World TB Day event, we are guided by data. And the data actually tells us now that there's a significant number of deaths in Citibank. There's an increase in infections in Citibank, and the treatment outcomes are not ideal. That's another thing, because we kind of predict that this will be the outcome of our intervention, and therefore, if the outcomes then are fairly disappointing, as in the case of Citibank, then we need a concerted effort then to kind of diagnose what are the issues that have to do with the proliferation of the disease, that is in terms of case finding, the deaths that are not decreasing, and the outcomes that are not pleasing. So that's why then we kind of focus at Citibank, and we will be looking at identifying those issues. We know that some of them might actually be relating to public health education for the nurses. There might be issues that are related to inter-town migration or intercity migration, other people coming from rural areas, coming to Citibank, probably looking at better prospects of finding employment, only to find that they don't find the employment, then they go back only to find that they've got this condition, or they actually got the condition when they were in Citibank. So those are the kinds of issues that the department is actually grappling with, so as to kind of get to the root cause of the challenges that are actually facing Citibank and see where we can assist as the government.
I see. All right. No, I see. That makes perfect sense. For anybody that is, looking for a resource and more education around TB, notwithstanding that you can walk into a clinic and get a pamphlet, I guess, for some reading materials. But are there platforms online that are accessible? Are there resources that are accessible that people could ask questions?
Oh, yes. Yeah, there are resources that are available and accessible, because now we are living in a world that is riddled with technology, and therefore we've got to up the ante and kind of get into the field of technology to assist the people, especially those that are kind of making a telephone part of their existence. We have what we call a TB health check. It's a tool that one can use using your own phone to kind of screen yourself whether you've got the tuberculosis. And we call this tool the TB Health Check tool. And first of all, using this tool is free. And you can use when you use your phone, even those phones that don't have the sophistication, like your Android and your Apple phones, the normal, what you call small phones that you can get for 200 rand or less.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are numbers that you dial. There's what you call a USSD line, which is free. And once you dial this number, you're actually going to get prompted, basically to get yourself screened. They ask you about signs and symptoms, what are you experiencing in terms of you feeling sick. And at the end of the day, they ask about where you stay, but they also kind of put you into comfort in that the information that you are providing to this gadget or facility won't be used for anything else except to communicate with you. It won't be given to marketers for them to come and market to you. No, not in that way. That's
fantastic.
Yes, that's one. And there's the other WhatsApp, which is minimal data. The WhatsApp number then is you dial WhatsApp. The number is 0600 123456. And then the WhatsApp itself, once you dial that number, it's actually going to prompt you. Is it TB or is it COVID or something else? And then you say TB. And then it takes you through the processes of getting yourself screened. And we are in a position as the department to actually then determine how many people have actually used this tool and how many have been found by this tool to have contracted tuberculosis.
Lovely.
Because this tool, what it also does is to actually direct you to the nearest facility. They know your positioning as you are using the phone, and you actually kind of spell out this kind of feeling that you're experiencing, and they suspect that you might have TB. Then they direct you, that is, to the nearest facility.
Lovely.
The beauty about this tool is that it speaks in 5 languages. It's your English, your Afrikaans, your Xhosa, your Zulu, your Sotho. So you are accommodated.
Let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up there, but Phumlani, unfortunately, absolutely. But I think you've definitely done a great job as the TB advocacy manager at the Department of Health. 0600 123 456. That's an easy enough number. 0600 123 456 on WhatsApp, and then you'll be prompted from there as one of the resources where you can go and screen yourself, and then you'll be geolocated and pointed to the nearest clinic. Let's take a quick break. Aldrin St. Pierre is standing by.
SAFM supports a litter-free South Africa. Play your part in keeping our surroundings and environment clean. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Just think. And I think Mark did it on purpose, yes. I think it did. How are you?
But I get it. Thank you.
You good?
Yeah, soldier on. I get it. Thank you.
What's coming up today?
So coming up on the show this afternoon, we look at the case that has been brought by the ANC against the MK Party and the registering of the MK Party as a political party that will be contesting the upcoming elections. That case is currently being heard at the Electoral Court in Bloemfontein. So that's one of the cases that we're looking at. And then also, I don't know if you saw the story, that there is, remember over the weekend, the Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, had a press briefing where he was speaking, Kudo Kwashe Mpofu, who was the CFO of one of the departments in the Northwest. Now, a story that the Citizen is carrying this morning has now revealed that there is actually another person in the same department who is actually the Chief Executive Officer of that department, the Development Corporation of the Northwest, Mujali Fanale. Allegedly, he doesn't have a standard 10, doesn't have a grade 12, of course. And one of the MPLs, an ANC MPL, has now opened a case against the MEC for Economic Development, who's also an ANC member. So very interesting story. So that's one of the stories that we're looking at. We'll be speaking to Mr. Jwaile, who is the one person who has now opened the case, and then also then reflecting on the President's keynote address at the closing of the Sustainable Infrastructure Development Symposium in Cape Town. So we'll be in conversation with Malusi Shezi, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Construction, Education and Training Authority.
Yeah, very interesting. A lot going on. We're all watching keenly what happens at that electoral court.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because, and yes, the other thing is there are two separate cases. Remember that one deals with the registering of the political party, the MK Party, and the other one is the use of the spear and the logo that the ANC says resembles its MK Military Veterans Association logo, and therefore they're also challenging that decision. So that one is going to be heard in KwaZulu-Natal, and this one is currently being heard in the Free State, which is relating to the registering of that political party. And remember also the warning that came from the Youth League leader of
I was about to say
Umkhonto party.
And I don't like that rhetoric that is so freely being sort of, aired by that leader, the Youth League leader, as well. There's another cadre there, an older Indian gentleman. Yes.
Viswan Reddy.
I don't like
and
that
Viswan Reddy is on the list.
It's dangerous.
Very, very, very,
so dangerous.
Very, very dangerous. And what I've realized and what I've picked up as well is people who are in support of the MK Party, and the ones who are saying that, hey, if you don't do this, there will be violence that plays out. I'm making reference to what happened in July 2021 when former President Jacob Zuma was incarcerated, and we know, of course, now that he's supporting this political party. Also interesting, seeing him there in court. I have to say that, I think it's Zanda Ngobo who tweeted a bit earlier on, these were once comrades in arms.
Right?
Yeah?
Brothers.
And now there they are, sitting on opposite sides in the courtroom, in the public gallery. Yeah.
But
that's politics for you.
What do politicians tell you all the time as Aldrin St. Pierre leaves our studio? There are no permanent friends and permanent enemies in politics.
Exactly.
When will we start believing them?
No, exactly. And they've been.
Yeah, they tell us all the time. Aldrin St. Pierre is coming up between 3 and 6 o'clock.
Introducing a collection of Audi Black and Urban Special Edition models crafted for the bold and curated for the progressive. From the sporty Audi S3 and elegant A4 to the distinctive Q2 and Q3, each vehicle has been created to be an extension of your identity. Style, design, comfort, and technology is yours to own with a guaranteed future value and a competitive monthly installment through Audi Financial Services. Visit audi.co.za to discover more.
Greetings, fellow South Africans. I am Ronald Lamula, Minister of Justice and Correctional Services. South Africa celebrates 30 years of constitutional democracy and human rights this year. As we reflect on this significant milestone, the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development is convening a national conference to assess progress and chart the way forward in advancing human rights since 1994. This will be hosted from the 18th to the 20th of March 2024, with the 21st of March 2024 dedicated to the commemoration of the National Human Rights Day. The conference will gather key stakeholders from government, civil society, academia, as well as international delegates to discuss, under the theme 3 Decades of Respect for and Promotion of Human Rights. We will emerge from the conference with recommendations that will inform our collective effort towards a future where a human rights culture is ingrained. Follow the conference in the media and our platforms to play your part in moving our country forward. I thank you.
Think bigger than just a banking partner. Think a team of specialized experts supporting you to make better financial decisions to enable your growth aspirations. Think a strategic partnership providing indispensable advice to help you make the right moves. Think bigger. Think Nedbank Commercial Banking. For more information, visit nedbank.co.za. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider.
Those who love the beautiful game can never have enough of the incredible moments. Like the fascinating last-minute goals, the unbelievable saves, the top-of-the-range reviews of critical match scenarios by the legendary Mr. Ref, the mummies of the week, and highly knowledgeable analysts. Catch Soccer Zone on Mondays at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1 at 10 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
You are listening to The Full Circle.
As we wrap it up today, we're looking at a conversation beyond the pink ribbon, the truth about female cancers. And we know most women stand as pillars of strength and oftentimes juggling various roles, whether it be breadwinners, caregivers, community leaders, etc., etc. And this relentless dedication to providing for family, however, it also at times comes at a cost to our very own health and well-being. And we thought we'd catch up with Vuyo Mjekula, who is the MSD South Africa External Affairs Director. It is International Women's Month, and we're taking a look at a conversation that is titled Beyond the Pink Ribbon, the truth about women's cancers in South Africa. How are you doing this afternoon, Vuyo?
Hi, Bridget. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for joining us. So beyond the pink ribbon, the truth about women's cancers in South Africa, in there lays the implication that perhaps we're so focused on one particular cancer that we forget the platitude or the multitude of other diagnoses that could affect women.
Well, absolutely. So I think we focus on breast cancer for good reason. It is the most common cancer among South African women. But beyond breast or beyond the pink ribbon, as you say, we definitely have other cancers that affect women substantially. And just some of those include cervical cancer, ovarian cancer, cancer of the vulva, etc. But I think cervical cancer is, one of the most important ones to highlight. And for 2 reasons. I think the first is that it follows in terms of being one of the highest rates of women's cancers in South Africa. So cervical cancer comes after breast cancer. But cervical cancer is the leading cause of cancer-related deaths among South African women. So cervical cancer kills more women than breast cancer. I think the other important reason to focus on cervical cancer is the fact that it is vaccine preventable. And so, when you were talking about all the roles that we play as women and the responsibilities that we have as we provide for our families, I think for me, when I think about a cancer that's vaccine preventable, I see it as part of my wellness journey and part of just ensuring that I can continue to be around for many years ahead so I can continue being there for my family and enjoy the fruits of my labor, so to speak.
Yeah. And I mean, for as long as I can remember, for as long as I've entered teenagehood and adulthood, there's been this drive to conscientize particularly women around cervical cancer. Are we winning that sort of awareness campaign? Because I think I was fortunate enough to have educators at a senior high school level and, family friends that were doctors and gynecologists. And so this was always a conversation that orbited my world. But are we winning that awareness and conscientization of women at a ground level around cervical cancer, considering everything that you've just said about its prevalence?
So I think the short answer, Bridget, is no. And you're incredibly fortunate to have grown up in an environment of such well-educated and knowledgeable people who really poured and were very interested in your health. The truth is, and I think that's why we have that, beyond the pink ribbon. There's a doctor who was once speaking about cervical cancer, and she said, the challenge with cervical cancer is that it's a shy cancer, right? It takes place in a part of the body that we generally are uncomfortable to talk about.
Yeah.
So I think there's still a lot of stigma around it, whereas if we look at the breast cancer movement, your pink drive, your breast cancer month, there's just so much more openness and willing to discuss it and talk about it. And even when you start talking about screening, you have so many messages everywhere you turn about the importance of a mammogram, about the importance of going to visit your doctor and getting a clinical breast exam. With cervical cancer, I think we just don't have enough noise.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we have to change. And it's particularly important in our environment. We have one of the highest incidents of people living with HIV in the world. And the WHO has estimated that a woman living with HIV is 6 times more likely to actually get cervical cancer. So I think with statistics like that and with the realities of our nation, it's something that we have to do a lot better at in terms of just awareness and building education. The one thing or indicator I will talk about which demonstrates that we're actually not doing as well as we should is looking at the rate of pap smears that women undergo on an annual basis. We are still very, very low. So, women are not taking advantage of what is quite widely available. A pap smear can be accessed at a clinic within a DISCM, or any sort of primary healthcare facility. Generally can be conducted by a nurse, a GP, not just your gynae or those that are specialists. And as South African women, we're not getting screened. So if we're not getting screened, and I think even our doctors and the level of awareness and education amongst them is unequal, quite frankly. In principle, you should go to the doctor. You go for your annual checkup.
Yeah.
They should ask you if you've gotten a pap smear. They should ask you if you've gotten vaccinated against HPV.
Yeah.
But I think there's still a lot of work to do in terms of education, both women such as me and you, but also doctors as well. at the primary healthcare level.
Yeah. And Vuyo, as you talk about screening and the education around it, I was, last year old when I was actually informed by a Dis-Chem sister that one could go to a nurse or your GP or a Dis-Chem certified nurse to actually get your pap smear versus going to your OBGYN, which oftentimes is also very expensive for most women.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think the way we have innovated in this country around the provision of primary health care is actually fantastic. And what it means is that we don't really have excuses. I mean, how often do you go into a Dis-Chem? I know that in a month, I'm probably in a Dis-Chem store or one of the major pharmacies, at least 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And these things don't require an appointment. And it's not just the pap smear that's available there. It's the general screening, which I think is so important that we do in general, whether you're talking about your blood pressure, your blood sugar levels, all of those, your cholesterol checks, just to ensure that you've got good heart health. But you should also obviously look at your pap smears for screening, but also vaccination. I mean, I think we have to move away from a society from thinking about prevention in the form, for example, of vaccination as something that's for children or babies.
Yeah.
We're now in the space where we have to think about life course immunization. And it's against things like flu, pneumococcal, pneumonia, but also HPV, human papillomavirus, which is, of course, the leading cause of cervical cancer across the world.
Yeah, we have to wrap it there, but just by way of final thoughts, anything that you'd like to leave our listeners with, particularly those that are apprehensive, about going for screening or getting those preventative vaccines?
Well, I'll say one thing. I think just talk about it. Advocate for yourself. I think we often believe that we know a lot less than our doctors, and so when we go there, we tend to become passive. I think we are living in an information age. Do your own research. Talk to your doctor. Don't be afraid to raise questions. We are currently driving an HPV awareness campaign in Mall of Africa as well, because we're really trying to drive consumer education and make people understand what options are available to them. But bottom line is, I think wellness in general has become really important to us. As women, self-care is really critical. So don't forget your health.
Lovely.
Because you won't be here forever if you do.
Absolutely. Vuyo Mjekula, thank you so much for the time today. And Vuyo is the MSD South Africa External Affairs Director. Pencil it in if you haven't done it as yet. As you listen to Vuyo and I, pencil it in. Give yourself the gift of life for your birthday. Make it an annual thing. You know what I mean? So you go in, you get your checkups, you get your screenings, you get your A-OK from the doctor, and you continue merrily for the rest of the year. And even if you don't get everything is perfectly healthy and in check and in balance, at least you have the ability to name a thing and then start with the right protocols of treatment. From myself and my team, we've given you a lot to think about, particularly in the second hour of the show, and we thank you for always choosing to be with us. We are out of here, inshallah, God willing. We'll do it again tomorrow.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
In our top stories,